here is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
Seder salutations to all you cognonauts out there, and welcome to yet another episode of Exofathom. I am Nick, and I am joined with my two lovely co-hosts as always. Mike, how are you?
Not too bad. I'm feeling a little insecure here being the only one on video, but I'll be
I
okay.
know. And we got Ayla here. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you, Mr. Show Host?
Doing all right. Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. We have been living life. Things happen, and sometimes we got to take a little break. But I did warn you.
Whenever we want.
Yeah, I did warn you last episode that we will be back whenever the hell we feel like it. So here we are. We are back, and we feel like it. So thank you for tuning in, everyone. We really appreciate it. Tonight we're going to be having a casual conversation, probably in addition to our deity series, but I didn't label it as such. We're going to be talking about the god Pan, and getting into some of the information about him, some of the mythology, maybe some more meta concepts, and an example in famous literature that we will also talk about. So stay tuned for that. It should be a fun episode, hopefully informative for everybody out there. So if you enjoy this, please hit that thumbs up button and that subscribe button. It would really help us out trying to build out that channel, and we can't do it without your help. So without much further ado, hey, Ayla.
Hey,
what makes you panic?
what doesn't make me panic?
That's probably an easier
don't
question.
ask somebody with a panic disorder what makes them panic. I gesticulate or I kid. No, I don't know what makes me panic. I guess something that would make my heart go crazy, right? Because if like a car comes at me too hard or something, and then I'm like, but I don't know, because I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. Golly, that's a good question. I gotta think about that actually.
Well, it's like I didn't share the notes with you guys or something, huh? That was my bad.
No, it's okay. No, I would just say actually, I think for me, panic comes in when I'm in a social situation where there is an unspoken expectation that I'm being punished for somehow. Or I think like when I'm supposed to do something but nobody tells me what I'm supposed to do. That's when I panic, because I'm like, I feel like I'm bad, but nobody told me why. And then it's like the uncertainty and the pressure together equal panic.
Yeah, that sounds like a problem. That sounds like a problem for sure.
Not fun.
No, doesn't sound like it. Yes, the inference of social expectation and not feeling like you can meet that, I guess, would induce panic for sure. Mike, what about you? What makes you panic?
City Hawking dances, speeches, public speeches, job interviews.
Yeah.
Shoot, he's just like, got him, I got him, bam, 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 baby, bam.
Rifling them off.
New cities to move to, new friends, public situations, thinking, being alone.
99% of life.
Soundtracks.
Family Feud. Ding, 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 ding.
Puppies, rainy days.
Computer, new programs, puppies, kittens, plants.
Stepping on a crack on the sidewalk.
Your mom.
Okay.
When strangers look at me too hard.
Oh.
Yeah,
when I look too hard at strangers. Canadians.
Canadians, fair.
Argentinians.
I feel like we're playing pretty fast and loose with the concept of panic, but okay, I'll take it.
Honestly, panic, I guess, it's been a shifting sort of ground. A lot of times, a lot of things would make me panic. Any sort of new information that was outside of like predicted environments would make me panic, I guess. I got very used to for a long time controlling my environment to the point where if something outside of that environment came in to disrupt it, then I wouldn't know what to do. This happens a lot in like social situations, so I have to limit my social circle. Nowadays, what makes me panic? Not too much. That's just due to like extensive therapy work, but um, honestly, I guess what makes me panic now is deep-seated thoughts. It's like it gets really introspective, I guess, like overly introspective, like Sartre's broken mirror sort of thing, where you kind of self-reflect a little bit too much. That's honestly what actually makes me panic.
Yes, ideas that won't go away. Things in your head that won't stop clawing at you. Yeah, I can get that for sure. Yeah.
What makes you
What
panic?
about you?
Yeah. Well, mine aren't as introspective. Mine are kind of silly, but I'll share them anyways because why
Cast
not?
iron pans?
Yeah,
Is it like proper
that is a
pans?
pan. Yes, yes. Yeah. I think, well, okay, so I have two. One is, I mean, a little bit more serious. One is more stupid, so I'll start with the stupid one first. But anytime I get a call from a phone number I don't know, like there is a small amount of panic that comes through my head, where to the point where I have to go look up the number just to make sure that it's like a robocall.
No,
And then
that
once
should be IRS.
the IRS, that's fair too. Yeah. A letter from the IRS, definitely. Yeah, but so if I get a number, like a call from a number I don't know, I instantly have to go check. It's just kind of like a compulsive thing. I mean, 99.9% of the time, it's a bot or a wrong phone number or whatever. But still happens to this day. I think that's probably from when I was younger. I was getting a phone call from a debt collector. So that definitely still triggers me a little bit. And then the more,
that's so sad.
well, it's
You know,
true.
you
It's
can-
true.
What my therapist has told me is that you can always ignore those phone calls.
Yes,
And
yes.
That's a good lesson for anybody with lots of bill collectors.
Yes, that's very true. Until they realize that you have a place of work and they start calling that, which happened to me.
As long as you
Oh.
keep it under the lawyer fee of them suing you, you're doing okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
gotta-
And everything is sorted now, but yes, back when I was younger and very broke, I definitely had that situation happen.
Preaching to
And
the
then
choir, but
yeah, and then
we're
the
gonna talk
more
after.
it's silly, but it's a little bit more semi-serious. It's that you guys probably have felt this before as well, but if you're in like a house you don't know and it's nighttime and you have to cross the house but while you're crossing the house, you're turning the lights off. Have you ever done that before? Where you have to get like to the room with the light, but you have to go through the house that's all dark. Each and every time I do that, I swear like there's a monster trying to get me. It's so dumb, but I definitely feel like a semi panic from that.
When I was a kid,
So-
it was always asking the persons whoever's house I'm crashing at for a blanket. Like there was like I was sleeping under like pizza boxes or something. I'm like, can I get a no? I can't ask for a blanket. So similar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think I've been better about that. I don't like it. It doesn't give me panic, but what will give me panic is if I'm going to bed in a bedroom with the door open. That door has to be closed. If it's ajar and there's just this void peering through that little crevice from the wall and the door, I can't sleep. I can't ignore it. I can feel it and it just grows heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier until it's closed.
I can attest to that because I'm a door open type of person, but Ayla is definitely a door shut person. So shut and locked, which is like my worst nightmare because if there's something happening in the house, I want to be able to respond to it. But Ayla's like, no, we're going to lock ourselves in here, which is probably the smarter idea. But still,
it creates a barrier.
Yeah, isn't that
Huh?
better to respond to if the door is like shut and locked?
Absolutely. Or if there's a fire, it creates
So
a
here's
barrier.
my current strategy is like I have a light that shines into the hallway next to my bedroom. So I keep the bedroom door closed, but I keep the light on. So if I like hear a noise, then I could trace the shadow under the door,
Right.
Nope.
and then
Add that to the list. Nope.
and then
Shadows
that
under
gives.
doors.
Oh no, I love it. That gives me information. Because like, all right, there is actually a threat here, and I need to
Right.
prepare. And I can
Yeah.
prepare on the other side of the door, and I know that I have the information that person doesn't. Where I could be anywhere inside that room, and they have to clear that room in order for it. So I have like the defender's advantage, but that's where I'm at right now. I usually keep the door open all the time, with like a little like Japanese restaurant style where you keep like a flag or some sort of cloth down, just so I
Yeah.
can hear the cloth or just so I can see it. But nowadays I need that door closed, and I need that little bit of light shining underneath just for that information. Because if somebody breaks in, then I can prepare. If I hear
Yeah.
the
No,
noise.
you get the
I
bat,
get that.
and then if you hear a noise, you're just like, I hear you out there. You got till 10. 10. 9. You just got to sound real crazy. 8.
No, I don't. You can't.
Prospector. 7.
You can't emit noise from like now we're getting to like tactical defense. Don't ever emit noise. That gives away
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
position.
You got to
Gives
stay
away your
quiet
position.
about that. Yeah. Yeah, I think I've told you guys in episodes prior about my irrational fear as a child that I thought that kidnappers, the way they kidnap you is that while you're sleeping, they pick up your bed and take you out. I didn't
Is that
have the
just the tooth
concept,
fairy?
No, but I had this like vivid conceptualization of kidnapping when I was a kid, and I thought it was that like burglars would break into your house while you're sleeping and then pick your bed up while you're asleep and then take you out of that.
No, that's just parties when you pass out drunk. That's all that
Or
is.
the Hamburglar. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a Hamburglar episode in there somewhere.
Maybe. But all of this is just to say that there is certain things that are completely irrational that sort of bring panic to us. And I think that was a good sort of introductory to the concept that I wanted to address with you guys, which is the god Pan, from which the word panic comes from, obviously. But he is also, I think we'll find in this episode, sort of a totem for the unknown and perhaps even an age long past in the human story. So let me get into some further detail for you guys, and we'll break this up, and you guys can interject whenever you want. We're not going to be very rigid about this, but I just wanted to give some info since this is an informational show, hopefully. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds, and flocks. And he's also a rustic god of music and impromptus. And he's the companion of nymphs. And I think we've had conversations about nymphs before. If you guys remember our episode on Narcissus and Echo, Echo was a nymph that fell in love with Narcissus, who did not feel the same way. And she was sort of cursed at the end of that story to lament on her own and be scattered across the earth. So he is very much, or if you guys have seen the Disney movie Hercules, Philoctetes, played by Danny DeVito, was a sort of nymph hound. And he was the first scene we see him is him chasing after nymphs. So that is Pan. He is highly associated with fertility and sexual drive. Let's see, where's more info here? He has the hindquarters legs of a goat, as well as the horns of a goat, in the same manner as a faun or a satyr. Now, a faun is the Roman version of Pan and the satyrs, and a satyr is just the Greek name for what Pan was. But he was a man with the horns of a goat and the legs or the bottom half of a goat. And let's see. And I guess that kind of makes a little bit of sense as to why he might be the god of shepherds, because I believe that the first sort of herd animals were goats. So it would make sense that he is an embodiment of the goat and man in a sort of symbiosis. Let's see. It's said that Pan derived from a Proto-Indo-European god named Pe-Usan, who was a pastoral deity. So it goes back to the god of pastures and herds. And it's also from the Vedic or Rig Vedic god Pushan, who was very famously a psychopomp. What episode did we do that on? You guys remember that psychopomp?
What the hell is a psychopomp?
So a psychopomp is somebody or an entity that ferries the souls across the plane. So basically comes from the word psyche and pomp, which means to move souls. So he would be a traveling guide for people crossing over into the next plane. And Pushan, which is the Rig Vedic version of Pan, was responsible for ushering the souls of the dead into the next life.
Rashadic?
So that, yeah, Rig Vedic is the Indian deity. Yeah, Pushan. Yeah. But Pushan was also responsible for marriages, journeys, roads, and the feeding of cattle. So another sort of callback to the pastoral type of god. And Pan is described as a rustic god. So that means that he was a god of nature. So this is during the time of, obviously the development of the Greek civilization, before the Roman civilization, or kind of in tandem with it, depending on which direction you're looking at it with. But there were definitely, you had the Olympians, who were sort of the 12 major deities of the Greek pantheon, but you had these older gods, and Pan would be one of these older gods that was worshipped, and his worship started in Arcadia, which is one of the islands in the Peloponnese, which is the chain of islands that make Greece up. And Arcadia is sort of described as a mountainous, lush, very rugged type of island. So there were no temples of Pan. What's interesting about him is that he was actually worshipped in caves, because he is this older deity that didn't really. Because he was an older deity, it seems that the continuation of his character into the sort of Greek pantheon was a carryover from a prior time. And that prior time is when people were probably a little bit more rudimentary. And so his worship places were in caves, particularly. And any cave that is dedicated to his worship is called a cave of Pan. And I should probably also say that Pan just means all in Greek. So this is where I'm kind of getting at with this idea that I believe that Pan sort of represents or is an embodiment of all the other deities that came before the Greek pantheon. You have to think about, this era where religions are changing, and so you had these, Greek people who were probably all worshiping their own things, mostly nature deities. And then you have this ushering in of the Olympians and the Greek pantheon, and these deities that are much more regal and associated with civilization. While Pan was there before, so he gets wrapped into it. But it's likely that he was a much older god that was sort of tied to a more naturalistic way of life. And so I think that that's a really important thing to distinguish about Pan, because it would make sense then that he is sort of a hybrid character, because he is, in my belief, at least. Well, actually, you know what? Let me ask you guys, why, aside from the pastoral deity thing, why do you think half goat, half man? Do you think you have any ideas about that?
Aside from the pastoral armor,
Yeah, the
background.
pastoral deity thing, like the deity of shepherds, that kind of makes sense. But do you think that there's
Hmm.
anything deeper to that, the idea of the goat man?
Well, it makes me wonder about like minotaurs and centaurs and sort of the timeline of, those half human animal hybrids, because it would
Mhm.
fall into that category. But I don't really have much to anchor about that.
No,
I don't
you're
know.
right about that, though. A lot of the hybridic deities that were in the Greek um, pantheon, again, pantheon, is they were older than the Olympians. The Olympians appear as humanoid, but a lot of the older gods, I think, were more hybrid.
Could you go back to that whole fawn thing?
Yeah. So
Forgive me.
Fawn is just the Roman version of Pan. So they just have a different name for it. But if you remember Pan's Labyrinth, I think the creature in the movie is called Fawn. Yeah, but it would just be a description of Pan through the Roman lens, just like Zeus and Jupiter and stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha. No, it's like this. Those sort of theologies, those sort of faith-based transitions, you go through this like liminal space. Um, the whole thing of Pan, it makes sense that you would centralize like all these ideas that you don't know into one place in order to build off of them.
Hmm.
I'm actually really interested if this sort of idea is brought back again during from like pagan traditions to more Abrahamic traditions, and
Mm.
if again you see that sort of centralization of one thing into this thing Pan. As far as like the goat and like half goat, half human, if it's the god of everything, then modern. I'm following kind of the linguistic trails here, but goat, of course, is the greatest of all time. Sort of like colloquialism. It's interesting to see how maybe like a god or gods can be born from this sort of notion. You have one thing like a goat that then is spreads from a human that then also has the top half of a human, that you see that idea then again resurrected again in later times with a greatest of all time, or sort of like a god of whatever that thing that does into something else. I wonder if it like now I'm playing with like collective unconscious ideas type things.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah, and you can also reverse that. So if you look at the image of Pan or a satyr, we have what we sort of more modernly recognize as the devil, right? Um, so you could see this that there could have been a sort of cultural transition from Pan being this sort of benevolent nature god that over time and through civilization he becomes associated with a demonic entity because you have I think it's Mephistopheles. You have like a lot of
Yes.
imagery of Satan as a satyr-like character, cloven hooves, horns, just missing a tail. But most satyrs have tails; they're just not forked tails.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where we get the notion of scapegoat from.
Maybe, maybe. What's interesting about Pan is that when he was worshipped in Arcadia, again, sort of during the time of the creation of the Olympians, he was a big hunting god. So the hunters would pray to him for a good hunt, and when they did not get a good hunt, they would do what's called scourging the statue of Pan, which means that they would whip the statue. So anytime they had a bad hunt, they would go
Kinky.
over to the statue of Pan and whip it. Yeah.
Yeah, kinky. Again, yeah, like that whole sort of like scapegoat mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was one more idea I had there, but I lost it. Go on a good hunt. Oh, hunting for like demons and devils. Something
Mm-hmm.
that we kind of use now, right? Like you want to hunt down your demons. Um, but I'm more interested in like why a goat? Why not
Yeah.
like why wouldn't the lower half be like a horse, like a minotaur, or like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bull minotaur, or anything like that? Why a goat?
Yeah.
Or this
And
man?
I think that's again maybe the most naturalistic interpretation is just that because he was a shepherd god, that would be a part of it. But if you go back to, I think we've had conversations about this before, but if you talk about these sort of nature deities, It could be a symbol of the animalistic nature of pre-civilized man. And so you have this idea that before civilization, before the enlightened minds of the like the non-paganistic people, even though obviously the Greek pantheon's still sort of paganistic, but when you usher one religion to another, there's always this look back at the more rudimentary deities as a representation of the animalistic nature of that time. So perhaps a hybrid between a man and an animal is apropos to sort of illustrate how how uncivilized we were.
And the shepherd of that brings in Jesus, right? The sort of shepherd of men.
Yes,
You have
yes,
this like shepherd God, or have this half human, half goat thing is like the shepherding thing, and the
yes.
shepherd of people becomes Jesus Christ, the evolution of sort of the stuff.
Well, it's great that you said that because there is a whole segment about the death of Pan. So Pan is one of the only deities in the Greek pantheon. Again, sorry, I keep saying it, but that's the way it is. Pan is one of the only deities that dies. So it was, I believe, 17 AD, the death of Pan was officially announced. And so he was it was who said this? Sorry. It was during the reign of Tiberius in AD 14 to 37. The news of Pan's death came to one Tamus, a sailor on his way to Italy by way of the Greek islands. A divine voice hailed him across the salt water. Tamus, are you there? When you reach Pelodes, take care to proclaim that the great god Pan is dead, which Talmus did, and the news was greeted from the shore with groans and laments. And this is just 14 years after the death of Christ. So I think that there is something there about the connection between Pan's death ushers in this idea of theism and Jesus and monotheism
Interesting.
in that
Then,
area, anyways.
well, and then you get like thousands of years later, Nietzsche proclaiming the death of God, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do we have, or was it the death of God and we have killed him? I forget the proper saying. Um, but no, you see these things in evolutions, right? Which ushers in the age of nihilism, the sort of like no self stuff, and then which is nowadays one can argue that science is the new faith, or
Yes.
rationalism, not science. Science is like science TM is like the trademark of the day, or the popular word, but really it's rationalism, right? Like
Yes.
your logic, even if it's flawed or not, logic is the ruler of everything around you as you see it.
Yes, the civilization of the mind. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
And then if Nietzsche is right, then eventually we should see the death of that into things that go back into more like I'm going to call it valuism, not more moralism, but more like what we find as individual values, and the death of this sort of collective value that is rationalism, and the birth of something that is individualistic, hopefully.
Yes, or the sort of rejection of the prior epoch, right? So, if you have this with the death of Pan ushers in the sort of worship of Christ, and there are a few scholars that point to that. They say that this delineates the point in which Christ becomes the object of worship, and so if Christ is the new object of worship, then it would make sense that Pan becomes the opposite of that, which would be the devil.
Correct. And then you get this new Pan as time goes on, which you see now with an atheism, right? Like Jesus becomes the very controversial. Jesus becomes the new devil, or like structured religion. Religion as a
Yes.
whole, faith in God becomes the new devil within the idea of rationalism and atheism,
Yep.
where science hells all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that I think that that's really interesting. It's true. And I know that Ayla is itching for a little bit more information about Pan because she's so excited about it.
No,
Um,
I'm trying to be better about not cutting people off and
no, go
blaming
ahead.
a
Yeah,
sound lag
yeah, it's okay.
for my enthusiasm. But no, I think it's interesting what Mike had said. One thing that I started thinking about as he was talking, and you were talking about the correlation of man's animalistic background and nature,
Hmm.
was that the Pandora's box story, right? Where panic was one of the first things out of the box, fear and panic.
Yeah, all of the terrors of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just think it's interesting, right? Where like when man's first like if Pandora's box is like humans in Eden or just humans on the planet, it would be kind of chaotic because we'd be following our id. We wouldn't necessarily have a set of morals. Like you have the first murder that happened at some point, like all that kind of stuff. So like it tracks in terms of like the larger history of humankind or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Pan definitely embodies that animalistic urge that humans have, and I can illustrate that a little bit more for you. Let's see here. So I told you that he was also a fertility god. Um, he was a womanizer or a nymphizer, I guess, because he was really specifically just into nymphs, which are kind of like fairies in the Greek legends. But in particular, I think that you guys know that he is known for what's called a pan flute, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So those are the little pipes of 7 pipes that are wrapped together in order to create a musical instrument. Well, I think that this perfectly sums it up. That he created that because he was fighting, or not fighting, but he was pursuing a nymph. And so one of the most famous Pan myths involves the origin of the pan flute, and it's called a syrinx. But she was a lovely wood nymph of Arcadia, the daughter of Ladon and the river god. And as she was returning from a hunt one day, Pan met her. To escape his importunities, good word, the fairy
Mm.
nymph ran away and didn't stop to hear his compliments. He pursued from Mount Lyceum until he came to her sisters, who immediately, pardon me, until she came to her sisters, who immediately turned her into a reed. When the air blew through the reeds, it produced a plaintive melody. The god, still infatuated, took some of the reeds because he could not identify which reed she became and cut 7 pieces, joined them side by side in gradually decreasing lengths, and formed the musical instrument bearing the name of his beloved syrinx. And after that, he basically is always portrayed with the pan flute. But the legend doesn't tell you whether he cut the nymph or not. So it's quite possible that he was able to capture the nymph as a reed and then blow on her forever. So
Yikes.
there you go. Yeah, yeah.
What a horrible fate.
What a horrible fate. Yes.
I've been reading too many romance books. Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting that he would be associated with just so many seemingly wildly different things.
Hmm.
Um, and then to think about like the origin of these myths when it wasn't so wild to assume that those were wild, like it was
Yeah.
just together somehow.
Well, to add to your statement there, he does seem associated with so many different myths because I really do think that he's an amalgamation of all of the deities before the Olympians. So I think that that's why he embodies so many different things. And even in my research reading, there's different lineages. Some people say that he's the son of Hermes. Some people say he's the son of Zeus. Some people say he's the son of Apollo. there's almost no pinning down where he comes from. And then even some say still that he was around before the Olympians. So there's really no knowing, because one of the legends or the myths that is told about Pan is that he was there to fight Typhon with the Olympians, which is one of the early battles in the Greek saga. And Typhon was this giant snake that came from the earth, and basically the entirety of all 12 Olympians had to fight Typhon. But it was only Pan that was able to defeat him by letting out an uproarious scream, so much so that it scared Typhon, and that's how he was able to be defeated. So that's where you get the concept of panic. Um, and even still, he was known to like his midday naps in the forest. So he was associated with the fear that is struck by somebody walking through the forest when they feel like they're being watched, because there was thought that if you were walking in the forest in midday, you could awake Pan, and if that feeling comes across you, it's because you've awoken him. So
Oh,
yeah, it's kind of
interesting.
cool. Yeah.
The Pan within or the external Pan? You don't know.
Yeah, well, you don't know, of course. You're right, exactly, because it seems like an internal, something internal is informing something external, or vice versa. So, yeah, it's kind of cool that way. But it kind of reminds me a little bit, if you're looking at like the Western European lore of the Green Man. It's very similar. The Green Man has this deep tie to the wooded areas, ancient wooded areas. He was a deity before all of the modern deities came, and eventually his favor was decreased. And but you can still find Green Man carvings in places in Ireland and in England, in very ancient tombs. So just like you can find carvings of Pan in ancient places as well. So it was still there. It was almost like a reminder of what was once before the quote unquote civilized age.
So he's just was that in Lord of the Rings? Tom.
Tom Bombadil, yeah,
Yeah, he's just Tom Bombadil, just scaring
kind
people
of,
in his little tiny bit of the
yeah,
forest.
yeah.
Or
He's like
Tom
an yeah,
Bombadil is just him, since
Yeah, one of the two.
right,
Tolkien
yeah.
came after.
I
Yeah.
I
I like
really
that Tolkien's kind of primary.
Tolkien's great.
Mhm.
I really do like this notion that he is like that he's always been around, sort of things, like one of the elder gods. Like we see
Hmm.
him in different forms. We have different names for him, and Pan is just one name for him. But whatever this thing that we're kind of harping on has existed always.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah, he's been around forever. And interestingly, too, another little tidbit: Pan could multiply himself into a swarm of pans, um, which is kind of
A swarm?
interesting. Yes, yes. So
That's
he could that there
creepy.
could be, yeah, which I think again harkens back to this idea that he is the embodiment of all of the past deities. That he
Or as
could
the fertility
mul-
god, he's sperm and just
Yes, that
multiplied.
too. Yes, yes, definitely.
Sorry, it's a graphic
No, no,
image,
that's
but
that's
I mean, they're
that's astute.
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very astute. And, you think about, swarms in nature, obviously packs of wolves, and, anything multiplied in nature is going to be a bigger problem. And so you have that characteristic that he shares as well. It's like the multiplying of pans. I think it was called a panoply. So he would be able to create more of himself, which is kind of interesting. And interesting as well is that part of Pan, well, one of the Pans that gets multiplied is a character named Eggy Pan. Get it? Eggy Pan. Ayla
Love
gets
it.
mad every time I leave an eggy pan in the sink.
Oh my
Um,
god, I can't stand eggs. They're just the worst.
well, it's Aegipan, but
Doesn't
um,
matter. Hate
I
it.
know,
No,
I know.
I'm just kidding.
But that's where we get the Capricorn symbol from. So the Capricorn is half goat, half fish, and the legend goes that in the battle of Typhon, Pan jumps into the Nile River, and because he did such a great deed, he was blessed with everything under the water becoming a fish, and everything out of the water staying as a goat. So that's where you get Capricorn, the goat fish, is a derivative of Pan. So again, we have this deep connection to almost every aspect of the Greek legendarium.
It's really interesting. You also think about like like how hippies and various people will say that like there's only two emotions, fear and love, that
Mhm.
everything sort of branches out from there. Panic could just be a synonym for fear, in which case it's a source emotion for
Yeah.
humans. And that's probably one of the golden threads for why it's so easy to weave them into the other myths. It's
Yes.
central.
Well, and panic sort of is just a fear with a like a temporal punctuation point, right? It's like an immediate fear. It's
Yeah.
something that like you like it's intense, it's hard hitting, and it's right now.
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely see that for sure. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else that I had about Pan?
How do we feel about the
Mhm.
the latter part of that word? Yeah, pan and then ick. Because like I'm also
Ick.
thinking about like pansexuality, like the thing that I guess that you're attracted to anything. If
Yes,
I'm
everything.
doing it right,
Yeah.
everything.
Mhm.
Um, but pan ick,
I love
like
lamp.
oh, I
There's
would
some
do
sexy
things
lamps, man. I mean, have you seen The Christmas Story?
never
Yeah,
had
Right?
an electrical. Never mind. We're going too deep into my
okay,
personal experience.
fair enough.
um, no, just like the pan ick, like the ick
Mhm.
part of it, where you have like a disgust response. Maybe that part of the panic that one feels in some sort of given circumstance, right? It's not like a fear response. It's more of like a disgust and you need to get away sort of thing.
Yeah.
You need to get away
Yeah, a
from everything
revulsion.
and the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, a revulsion, definitely, like a visceral experience. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Um,
yeah, like a
yeah.
somal experience, like a somatic experience. That's like something
Yes,
like
there you go.
feeling in your body sort of thing.
That
Mhm,
might be my
mhm.
next episode, is
What?
disgust.
Disgust? Yeah, it's a good one.
It's not a
And
very well discussed topic.
hey,
Disgust.
there you go.
Hey,
And
if you call me
and
Disgusting
disgusting.
salutations.
There's
I
like an
already have the
Eminem line,
intro.
right? There's an Eminem line about that. Like it must mean that I'm. If you hate me, it must mean that I'm disgusting. Like
Oh yeah, that's why you
disgusting or
disgust
disgusting.
me. Yeah.
Yeah,
mhm,
sort of
yeah.
Right, I'm
And
channeling Buddha Eminem. Okay. Sorry.
okay,
See, I'm bad. I interrupt. So okay, I'm gonna just
No, keep
mute.
going, keep
okay.
talking. This is a
No,
proper
not about
conversation.
Eminem, please. Um, just
Okay,
one more
hold
thing
on.
on
So
Here's a new
Pan.
episode. Okay.
Oh my god. All right, one more thing about Pan before I move on to my hard tangent here. Um, he was also one of the primary accompaniers of Dionysus. So again, you have that tie to the more hedonistic nature of man, pleasure and revelry, and like it's not all negative. It's just that there was a lot there. It's a very encompassing thing. So Dionysus being the god of revelry and wine. Pan is said to always be accompanying him, playing his flute. And so you have this tie back again, to perhaps what is perceived as a more animalistic human, howling at the moon while drunk in the woods on a full moon. You know what I mean? Like this very visceral, somatic type of lifestyle. So that also was one thing I wanted to note.
outside of those sort of academic definitions, why do you think Pan accompanied Dionysus?
It probably has to do with, let's see, because of the fertility angle, maybe. He's a big part of fertility, so you have to think if Dionysus is the god of revelry, I mean, what's happening at the end of a night? Probably some sex. So, like he might be the closing
sex.
Wow,
band.
wow.
Yeah.
The closing band.
He's the closing band of the night, you know what I mean? Like playing his little flute, getting everybody together. Yeah.
Oh man, now I imagine just Pan watching me bang somebody.
Or blowing somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, there you
There you
go.
go.
Story.
The
There's
flute.
some
Mhm.
Yeah.
fruits.
Yeah.
No, I find it interesting that those two come hand in hand. But I mean, if you ever had a night like a Dionysian night without like proper um, without proper philosophic training, you may find yourself waking up under an unfamiliar ceiling, right?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Like where you wake up in somebody's house, you don't know who they are, you don't know how you got there, any of that, and you feel that instant set of panic.
Yeah.
You feel that
Where am
sort
I?
of,
What happened last
"Oh,
night?
what happened?"
Yeah,
You look
yeah.
over. You look over to the person next to you, and you're like, "Did I? Was that? Did we?" And then you have to figure everything out from there. So I do find it
Yes.
interesting to go together, even in ancient times.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The Greeks knew something about something, that's for sure.
I'm
And
sure they woke up plenty of times under unfamiliar ceilings.
yes, I'm sure they did. Maybe in the middle of the forest, where they're like, "Oh my God, where the hell am I?"
Yeah, under the moon. They're just
Yeah,
like, oh dear, what have I done?
Oh man. Well, this marks our hard segue, but it's not really. But I just wanted to bring up something in a more modern representation because as these deities go throughout the eons, they sort of morph. We've talked about sort of modern representations of Pan as the devil or Mephistopheles, and definitely in this sort of Victorian sense, he was a satyr. But in the more sort of last 100 years sense, can you guys think of another interpretation of Pan?
Oh, I know
Anything
where
of
you're going with this.
literature significance?
Oh gosh.
I
Oh
don't
gosh. Here it comes.
What?
know.
I know where you're going. I'm not gonna say anything though, because I kind of think
No,
I
go
know.
ahead, Ayla. Big brain
I'm
Ayla
not gonna
over here.
bring
Where
it
am I
up.
going?
No.
Oh dear
No.
Lord,
Oh no. You talk
what
about the
have you
last
done,
100. I said the
Ela?
last 100 years. I said the last 100 years in literature. Ayla's going way crazy about stuff. I'm not even going
Are
there.
we going? Are we going?
She's trying to be all big brain, and I'm like, no, dude, keep it simple.
We covered
Uh-huh.
Faustian stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Faustian is 1800s. I
Yes.
think.
So we're talking early 1900.
Yeah, early 1900s. Pan. Fuck, I don't know, man. Like folk music?
I'll give you a name. I'll give you a hint. It's in the name.
And what name? In Pan?
Pan. Mm-hmm.
Naps?
Goldrush? Pan?
No. Okay. All right. I've tortured you guys long enough. Peter Pan, guys. Peter Pan. Peter Pan.
Who's that?
Peter Pan. Who's that? I don't know. Just some schmo.
You're that on the nose with it?
Well, I mean, I told you it wasn't that difficult. What did you think I was going to say?
I don't know. I was
I've
beautiful
never heard of
minding
it.
over here.
I've never heard this Peter Pan thing.
Oh well, then let me regale you with the tale. Have you guys ever? Have you ever read the book? I mean, I haven't, but I was researching about it, and it's actually kind of shocking to me about how much, name obviously is, taking from the god Pan, but a lot of the attributes of Peter Pan are also within the god Pan. So I found that quite fast. I can a little bit, not very much. So Peter Pan was written by novelist J.M. Barrie. And it's about a mischievous young boy who can fly and never grows up. Peter Pan spends his never-ending childhood having adventures on mythical island of Neverland as the leader of the Lost Boys. And he interacts with fairies, pirates, mermaids, and the Darling family. obviously Wendy and all of that stuff. But what I found interesting about Peter
Who's
Pan
Wendy?
specifically, Wendy Darling,
Hmm?
the girl in Peter Pan,
Yeah,
the
I've never
family
seen
that.
it. I have no idea what
Okay,
you're talking about.
have you seen the movie? Have you seen
Oh,
Hook?
there's a movie?
Oh,
Hook.
shut up! All right, well, damn it. Anyways,
Talk to me like I'm 5.
Yeah. So the Darling family is the family in the book that Peter Pan visits from Neverland and absconds and takes the children one night. And this causes a lot of chaos with the parents, obviously, but the kids don't necessarily mind because they're traveled off into this place called Neverland, which is it's a realm in which you never grow up. But what's interesting about this realm is that Peter Pan is like God in this realm. So it's said that Peter Pan is the only person in Neverland that it responds to. So when he leaves, he tends to come to the human world often. And so when he leaves, everything on the island sort of goes dormant. But as soon as he arrives, everything wakes back up again. And it's said that also he's able to create anything that he imagines in Neverland. So he has this incredible ability to do whatever he wants, and that obviously is the reason that he probably never wants to grow up. But we were talking about man's more natural or animalistic base self, and this idea of growing up, I think, is an interesting parallel to the way that we sort of need to curtail our inner urges in order to conform to society. Whereas Peter Pan is more interested in living in this world where he's an omnipotent being that never has to succumb to any of these restrictions.
Why is
Ayla,
that bad?
it's not necessarily bad. I just think that it's analogous with the concept of the god Pan, where Pan represents a lot of the animalistic nature of humanity, which is a truth. It's just that it is contrary to the trajectory of human society. Because as we progress through society, where more and more limitations and restrictions are put upon us, Pan and Peter Pan sort of embody that free spirit that never has to regulate themselves.
Interesting.
That sounds great. Ayla, what do you think?
Well, I was just gonna say that I kind of like it. I think that the imagination aspect of it's kind of interesting to me because it's like, if you're imagining your own world, you don't have to answer to any external people. But but then once you encounter other people, you're encountering other realities, other minds, other desires. And that's where imagination sort of starts to become contained. And, for better or for worse, chaos could ensue or pan flute sex music, who knows?
Yes. Yeah.
Ew, why would I want to contain my imagination?
I never said anybody would want to. I'm just saying that the presence of other people might stymie that.
So it's not that I want to, because I have to.
I mean, I'm not arguing for anything, but sure.
Yeah. Well, in order to conform, I think that we all have to sort of stymie a certain portion of our base instincts. But it also comes out in Peter Pan's personality. In the book, it says that he's like a complete sociopath. He has no interest in other people's feelings.
Love it.
And he goes, he goes between mischievous and very jovial, and they say that he's half bird. And I should have said this before, but Pan is also a deity of small birds. That's why in the movie Hook, when Peter Banning becomes Peter Pan again, he does the crowing, and it's because in the book Peter Pan was said to speak bird language, so he was able to speak like a bird and all of that. Obviously, because he could also fly, so they thought he was part bird.
What's Hook?
Hook is the bitterness of the adult life, right? So he's he's the one that hates Peter Pan. He's Peter Pan's arch nemesis, obviously, but he's the old pirate that is stuck in this world of a boy who gets to be an omnipotent deity, but he's a grown up. And so, Neverland doesn't really have much use for him because, he's a grown up and he doesn't get to have this like, childlike life anymore. So he has this deep resentment towards Peter Pan.
So something of like some sort of like semblance of time has him.
Yes, big time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The disdain an older person might feel if they're maladjusted, looking at younger people and saying, "You damn kids," you know what I mean?
Oh,
that's Captain Hook right there.
So like they're the old man, like get off my lawn, sort of thing.
Yeah. Or if you want to take it in the Pan civilization, Keelan, thanks for checking us out. Never connected Peter Pan with the God Pan until now. Makes sense. Oh, good. Well, good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least one person is impressed. Appreciate it.
Touched by the gospel of Pan.
Did you just? I just saw the letter K. So K is Keelan. Is that what
I know it because of the icon. I can see the icon. Yeah.
Numbers could talk. Very great show.
There we go.
Captain Hook also might represent the coming in civilizing of religion, right? So if Peter Pan is Pan and this sort of like visceral deity, this nature deity, this sort of more earthy, animalistic side of humanity, and then we have this crossover event where we're looking at more higher aims, and like you said, sort of aiming towards a more unified deity. We might see Captain Hook as this more rigid system looking at this animalistic system with disdain.
So what is the comparative analysis? What is the use of an adult having a more rigid system versus a more animalistic system that is free? Like, not free. That's a little bit weird. What's the difference between, like, say, a more rigid system like Hook has versus a more non-rigid system that Pan has, or Peter Pan has?
It's a good question. I don't know because I haven't read the whole story, but I'm like just sussing it out. I don't know if there is any benefit for Captain Hook's rigidity, except for the fact that he might be he's wiser, and so maybe there's something in that. But he's still victim to Pan. He's still victim to Peter Pan. Like there's nothing that he can really do. He's almost in hell. Neverland is Captain Hook's hell, basically. And so maybe there's a lesson there that too much rigidity puts you in a place of hell.
So then is it really wiser to be more rigid as you get older?
Well, I don't know if wiser is the right word for it, but there's a level of, because Peter Pan's not a good guy. He's very impulsive. He has no caring or feeling for anybody else. He absconds children and takes them from their families, and doesn't have any remorse, and doesn't really even care about them when they're in Neverland. So there is something there. You have to have this balancing act of like care versus not care. I would say Captain Hook cares too much, and then Peter Pan cares too little. And maybe the reader is somewhere in between.
Some sort of anxious sort of thing where you want the kid to behave in a certain, well, you over apply your own principles in the way that Pan does, right? Or sort of like be free or being a kid, whereas Hook wants them to get out of Neverland. Oh, sorry. So Peter Pan wants them to always stay there, and then Hook wants them to get away, sort of thing.
Yes.
To quote unquote grow up.
Yes.
And that's sort of like maybe the more avoidant thing that Pan is trying to teach, or Peter Pan is trying to teach to the children.
Yeah.
I think there's all. No,
I feel like that. No, I think there's also, because you were saying that, I think there might also be a level of like Gnosticism in there too, where it's like Captain Hook, because of his age and maybe quote unquote knowledge, I'll use the quotes, air quotes there, because he's an older person, he has a little bit more life experience. He sees Neverland as a prison, whereas Peter Pan sees it as his playground. And that goes back to, if we take Neverland and put it in the middle of a forest, Pan would be much more at ease in the forest, whereas somebody from Athens goes into the forest and feels nothing but chaos because they're not familiar with the area. And so you have maybe this juxtaposition between civilized living and then naturalistic living.
Maybe so. I really do like that comparison. That one human's playground is another human's purgatory, or what was the word that you used?
Prison?
Yeah,
Hell.
prison.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that. That sort of contrast. But no,
Yeah.
I do. Containment maybe the same thing as prison, but I do find it delightful that where like Hook actually is the good guy, where Peter Pan is the bad guy in this sort of tale. Because on the surface, to me, it seems like Peter Pan is like everybody just should have fun and be children forever.
Yes. Right. Oh, and interestingly enough, that is sort of when he takes the darling children, which is Wendy and her two brothers, to Neverland. There is this sort of feeling, but the reader goes through the story with the darling children, and towards the end, they realize they want to go back home, that they don't want to be in this place anymore. It's not real. It's this sort of fantasy, or maybe like a hyper reality that they don't like. So, yeah, Ayla.
I was just wondering, it's interesting because it's also looking at like, from the perspective of a kid, you think you want to go to like that island that Pinocchio ended up going to,
Yes,
where it's
Pleasure
like,
Island.
yeah, cotton candy all the
Mhm.
time, no curfew, no restrictions, no boundaries. But from a psychological and child development standpoint, kids need boundaries and structure.
Yes.
So it makes
Yeah.
sense that they would want to go back, but um, kind of odd for that to be the lesson from a character inspired by another character that kidnapped kids and was like a
Yeah.
terror.
Right. What's up, Mike? How you doing, man? He said, I've heard a theory that Hook is the real hero of the story. If you watch Once Upon a Time, which is actually a really good series, Peter Pan is in that, and he is absolutely a villain. He's like this psychopathic kid that's lived for 1,000 years, and he's like a mastermind. And if he takes you into Neverland, you're never getting out, because it's like he's able to control the entire island with his mind. It's
Oh
pretty
my God.
cool, actually. Yeah.
That
It's
kinda-
and Captain Hook was his prisoner in Neverland, so it's pretty cool.
One, that is a very cute dog. Please
Yes,
Yes.
comment more. I want more dog
Pepper.
pictures. Oh,
It's
that's
Pepper.
Yeah.
Aw. And too, what I find it interesting is like, if we set this up in a sort of very sort of Christian sense, who is God and who is the devil? Is
As
Hook
in this story,
is Hook the devil and Peter Pan the God?
yeah, I think they can kind of be interchangeable with each other, to be honest. What I wanted to say too is that we had the concept of a psychopomp, right? I told you guys earlier in this episode, the psychopomp is an individual that ferries souls to the next world. Well, that's what Peter Pan does with the children. He takes them from this earth and then ferries them to Neverland. So there could be a metaphor there for death as well.
But
And
Peter Pan,
Hmm?
isn't Peter Pan also the god of Neverland? As we've been
Yes,
framing
yeah.
it?
Yeah, he is the god
That's
of
why
Neverland.
you named this episode what you named it. The death of a
Yeah.
god. Oh no. Well, the
No,
god of
yeah.
death.
Well, both.
No,
Yeah.
the death of God. Lower D.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yeah.
The little D, death of
Little
God.
D.
Capital D, death of God.
hmm
Or death of a God. A God.
Yes, and another little, another little tidbit of similarity there is that Peter Pan's confidant and best friend, we know who that is, right? Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is a fairy. And the god Pan was very into nymphs, who are fairies as well. So, and it's interesting because Tinkerbell was extremely in love with Peter Pan. And actually, all the women in Neverland are in love with Peter Pan. So that's how you know it's sort of like his own little fantasy land.
But I was gonna say
exists,
too.
right?
Wait,
Go for it,
what?
Ayla.
You're gonna say it, Ayla?
I said when you were describing like all the negative attributes of him, I was like, you just described the like bad boy architect of every like
Yeah,
romance read that's like
right.
popular right now, right? Because they have to be
Yep.
kind of like a brute and
Mhm.
not good, dangerous. I mean,
Yet a master of their domain.
I think there even is a romance book written about
Probably.
Neverland and like Hot Pan.
You ever heard of Rule 34?
Yeah, that's true. Yes. Yeah.
You know what? Never mind. I've said too
Don't
much.
worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. No such thing exists on the internet. There's no Rule 34 of the internet. Continue, Ayla, sorry. So, like every bad boy sort of archetype kind of fits into this thing. They're a god of their own realm. Does that just link back
they're
to
aloof.
Does
Yeah.
that link back to the Pan thing? Oh, aloof properly or aloof deceptively?
In a deceptive way, but there's this sort of like magnetism, right? With the god Pan, he's the god of fertility and sort of sexuality as well. So you see this represented in Peter Pan as well, because the mermaids are in love with him and the fairies are in love with him. And particularly Tinkerbell, who saves herself or saves Peter Pan by drinking poison. And that's how she gets her name, Tinkerbell.
Real Romeo and Juliet stuff.
Yes. And in the
exist?
Do what?
Do they all exist in the real world, or are they all just in Peter Pan?
So you have the Lost Boys in Neverland, who are the stolen children that Peter Pan has taken to Neverland, and they have not returned. So the Darling children go with him on a visit, but they decide that they want to return, so they come back home. But the Lost Boys live with Peter Pan in Neverland forever, unless you piss him off. And the only way he gets pissed off is if you mature. So there's a contingency plan, because apparently in Neverland you can grow up if you start maturing. So you won't grow in age, but if you start growing in sort of like mentality, or maybe growing is a wrong word, but changing in mentality and not adapting to his mentality, then he banishes you to the nether realm. And so a lot of the kids that start to get wise and don't want to be there anymore, or maybe go against him or show any sort of maturity, get banished to the nether realm. And so he has a very small contingency of Lost Boys that still are with him, but there's been presumably many that have also been banished.
That's horrifying.
Yes, it is horrifying. Good old bedtime stories.
What was my original question? I apologize. I've been drinking a lot. What was the trace of this question?
Pan is a bad boy.
Yeah.
Main character.
World. There's lots of things that are like this. The Lost Kids, the Lost Boys that have been there.
Oh, you had asked if there are people that are in the real world, or like, are they people in the real world, like the people in Neverland? So no, they're the only people that were once, I guess Captain Hook and his crew were once real people, but they are like 1400s pirates. So they've been there for at least 500 years.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Why? They're all fantasy. They're not real. It's the question I'm begging here. Which is a logical fallacy, which is fine for this sort of thing. Read that comment, please.
Yeah, and Mike says that's a dark and scary thought, to be banished to the nether realm. That's where Scorpion is. Yeah, yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah.
Scorpion.
Mortal Kombat. Yeah.
Um, they're real. So is it more important to play in reality, or is it more important to act in reality than it is to play in fantasy? This is what we're getting at. We're like
Mm.
Pan. So like, but Pan is a sort of liminal god, right?
Mhm.
Where throughout multiple periods of time, and right now, what it seems like the current phases between once you've gotten rid of all sort of um, Greco-Roman notions of God, monotheistic versions of God, scientific versions of God, we get into this point of maturation where you have to grow out of the fantasy eventually of some sort of God.
Mhm.
Not to speak so nihilistically. Forgive me, I'm just following trees of my thought. But this is where we're at right now, where this sort of notion of having some sort of God is a fantasy, and we have to mature out of it in order to reach some sort of adulthood, where the sort of things actually the sort of notion that we have where if Peter Pan is a god, the sort of sociopathic sort of god that exists to force all people in fantasy lands, which is told through a book or through some sort of fiction, or not fiction, sorry, through some sort of medium. But you have Hook here, who is trying to get people, literally growing them out of it with a hook of age.
Mhm.
Um, is this sort of is this sort of the new age? Not new age religion. That's a I don't know what I'm asking here. Is this what we should be aiming towards, where we should be working
Yeah.
ourselves out of a fantasy world of infinite childhood into the realistic world of adulthood, whatever
Yeah.
that means?
Well, I think that's a really good question and a good point. I think that we should take care because I believe that the story also illustrates this that maturation that you find in Captain Hook leaves him embittered and angry and hating his reality. You know, he's stuck in this land. He hates it. He's embittered. He's angry. So there is a pitfall to too much of that maturation and letting go of that free spirit. So I think there is a desire or an these two characters are juxtaposed to each other, and you as the reader are supposed to sort of find good and bad in both sides, and hopefully you find that balance. And maybe that balance is in the Robin Williams movie Hook, where Robin Williams is Peter Pan, but he decides to leave Neverland and grow up. And then he forgets that he was Peter Pan and becomes a really miserable lawyer who's bogged down by responsibility until he visits Neverland again one more time to save his children and finds that balance between the adult Peter Pan and the child Peter Pan. And he becomes a much happier and whole person, much more appreciative of the life that he's in.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
then, in theory, we get pulled in by the hook as we get older. We escape Neverland in the first sense. But then, if we do adulthood right, we can return back to that childlike nature and go
yes,
back to Neverland, free from Peter Pan's sort of, or Pan's, in this liminal god sort of sense,
hmm
influence, and do what
yeah.
we will, go in and out, in and out, in and out, and out, and out, and out, that
You
sort of
can
thing.
become your own psychopomp, if you will. Yeah,
Hmm.
yes, you can be your own fairy into the mental scapes. Yeah.
Do you know what this is leading upon? You know what I'm trying to hint at here?
Well, go for it.
This is a very Jungian idea
Okay.
where, as you get older, initially, imagine Neverland or like Peter Pan being the god of your fantasies or whatever. And then as you get older, you will eventually find this sort of station within human reality where you have to become an apprentice. You have to
hmm
focalize, well, you have to leave Neverland and focus on things. You return back to Neverland as kind of like Hook in a sense, as an adult,
hmm
and see all these things as childish, right?
Yeah.
Like, why did I play video games? Why do I have like? Have you ever had those like frozen dinners with like the
Yeah. The
dino
Swansons.
nuggets?
Yeah.
Was it with the little penguin on it?
Yeah, I remember those. Those specifically
Yeah,
had the penguin on them. Yeah.
yeah. Like you leave all of that stuff. You go like dive into like ramen noodles and shit throughout for like typical college kids. Dive into ramen noodles, dive into all that stuff, and then once you get past a certain point of maturation, you can go back to Neverland. You can go enjoy like visiting your inner child, so to say. Your inner child is always stuck in Neverland at this point,
Right.
and you can go visit your inner child, and your inner child is just playing, having a good time, and pull new things from that. This is the latter half, the Jungian idea of maturation, where you can also have your Hook and your Peter Pan, and you
Mm.
can have your Tinkerbell, who is your, I don't know. We get romantic with that. I don't know where that quite fits in right now. I'm not really that well adept at life to say that sort of thing. That sort of thing. I failed in a romantic relationship, so I have no basis to argue with that, or to juxtapose, or not juxtapose, to present an argument logically and soundly with that. Um, but as you do that, you can go back to Neverland over and over again as you maturate.
Yeah.
And is that the thing we're playing on?
Yeah, I think that that's probably a good way to tie it into also Pan the god, right? So if Pan the god is sort of the god of the naturalistic world, and we have this society, the Greeks, creating cities like Athens and creating civilizations that are less and less tied to the naturalistic world, that could be looked at as a sort of maturation of society. And then you hit this critical point of maturation where people start to desire the naturalistic world again. And that's why you have people that go camping on the
Mm,
weekend. Like,
yeah, challenge the god of everything, so that liminal space. That makes sense, especially with the Dionysian vector played in there, where
well, and
what is
those
the
people that
vector?
work, some of the hardest working people also party the hardest. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it, right? The Dionysian affect of life, where you, I mean, Dionysus is the goddess of is the god of madness. We had that flute playing along. Okay, yeah, that all tracks. Sorry,
Hmm.
my brain's working faster than I can speak.
Okay. No worries. Ayla, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Not really. I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Did we touch on like why was um Captain Hook a pirate? Like of all the things that he could have been, pirate?
Mm.
Maturity stills the fantasy of childhood. So as the adult in you still pirates the ship of your life.
Mm. There you go. That's a good
So
connector.
it has to like captain it and move you forward through it. You don't really have a choice in it. Hence
Hmm.
the pirate like nature of Hook.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that. I mean, because pirates are also captains, seafaring men, and
Hmm.
the sea is a symbol of chaos. So I guess
Yeah.
it could make sense.
Yeah.
Adulthood is nothing but chaos. And then they
Yes.
sort of keep that pan like nature with the drinking and like just add to the chaos of it. But yeah, like that sort of thing is just a kidnapping of the inner, or the kidnapping of the part of you in that liminal space that has to become an adult. It's not the kidnapping of the child; it's the kidnapping of the thing that has to maturate and brave the seas of madness with nothing more than a bottle of rum.
Hmm.
And then that's how you become an adult.
Yeah. You should definitely watch Hook if you have not watched Hook. It's really good. It's one of my favorite movies.
You
Yeah.
know, hypothetically speaking, I've never seen it,
Okay.
but
Fair enough.
other hypothetically speaking, yes, it is a very good movie.
All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah. Anything else you guys wanted to add? Good. All good.
Hmm.
So, what is the birth of a new god? Or do you think Pan
Uh,
always exists? Or
for this
is
era,
Pan always dying? Yeah. What is our birth?
uh, I think
'Cause we
Pan
have
is
no god.
always. Yeah, I think Pan is always dying, and he's always adding to his list of identities. Probably, you know. With the passing of each epoch. I mean, I guess right now we're in this sort of rational epoch where we're trying to value logic and the empirical over the spiritual. I don't know what moves forward, whether there is a linear path or whether it's a cyclical path where we just fall back into the sort of metaphysical and spiritual. That seems just as likely to me as like in creating some new thing that we deify. But I mean, I guess the apex of that would be something like advanced technology. If we wanted to continue this path of empiricism and technology and all of that stuff, you might think of AI as some type of deity that might be next on the altar. But that might be the apex of that epoch. That might be the pan of this epoch that then gets succeeded by something else.
I think AI is more the hook and a little less the pan.
Okay.
I love AI. I'm a student of it, but it's not pan. Not right now. Maybe one day, but not right now.
Well, we'll have to see, I guess.
I say that begrudgingly and hurtingly because, yeah. All right, cool.
Sounds good.
Good
Ayla,
show, man.
thanks. Anything else?
I think that's all I got.
Okay.
I need to read more about Pan. Apparently, there's just a lot there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think you guys will like it. Go watch Hook and maybe read Peter Pan because I might go pick it up just because of the information. Oh, there was also just another one thing that sort of
You're
adds.
so cute.
Sorry.
I might pick it up because of the information.
Yeah.
You're jazzed. Okay.
Well, I like the really Jungian ties, and there's a lot of deep metaphor there. But one of the things that in the early plays of Peter Pan, it was said that he wasn't able to be touched. So that's another little part of Peter Pan lore that might add to the psychopomp thing. Also, if you recall, Peter Pan wrestles with his shadow quite a bit, which is another nod to the Jungian archetypal stuff.
Oh,
where
that's
he is,
right.
he's always
he's touching Pan.
yeah, he's always chasing his shadow and trying to reconnect with it. So
damn, they made that.
Kind of huh?
When did they make that movie? Like the 40s, 50s?
Oh, the movie came out in 1953, but the story of Peter Pan, I believe, is like the early 1900s. Let me just double check. I'm going.
But was he playing with his shadow in the early 1900s, or was it in the Disney one? And did it predate Young or not? Because all this stuff about shadow work, I wonder what came first.
So there's a little bit of logical fallacy here. Think discovered more than invented.
I think there's a logical fallacy here. No, I'm just kidding.
What a bitch! What a bitch!
Peter Pan came out in 1902.
Ayla, I love you. But I think I touched a nerve there.
We're out of here.
I'm just saying, man, you're just a little
Yo.
contrarian.
That always existed. No, that always existed.
At 10.
All right, we're out of here.
45.
Thanks, everybody.
There's a
Really
throwdown.
appreciate it. Ayla's talking over me. I'm just going to say goodbye, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Chaos.
Bye.
Hey.
What a cunt.
God.